Hello everyone, today I'm going to explain the 2022 action thriller movie Ambulance. Bar. Let's dive in and see what happens. The film opens at Will's house. Will is a war veteran who is desperately seeking help from the state to pay for his wife's surgery. The insurance company refuses to cover Amy's operation, calling it an experimental procedure. No matter how hard Will tries, he cannot secure the $230,000 he needs. Meanwhile, a female rescue worker named Cam, along with her partner and ambulance driver Scott, rushes toward an accident scene. A young girl has been impaled by a steel rod in a car crash, and Cam must do whatever it takes to keep her alive until they reach the hospital. Back at Will's home, we see him lying to his wife, telling her that he has a job interview in about an hour. In reality, he goes to meet his adopted brother Danny, something he hides from Amy because Danny is partially involved in the criminal underworld. Will explains Amy's condition to Danny and then asks him for a loan. But Danny says he doesn't have that kind of money right now because he has invested everything into an upcoming job. Just then, Danny's crew arrives and informs him that they need to move out in 5 minutes. Danny tells Will that he would have given him even more money if he could, and then offers him a chance to join the operation. Their plan is to hit the city's central bank and steal $32 million, but they must move quickly, because the money is scheduled to be transferred out later that very night. Will doesn't want to get involved in any criminal activity, but Danny reminds him that he served his country and never got anything in return. Now it's time to do something for his own family. Meanwhile, 2 police officers are driving toward the bank. One of them, Jack, wants to ask out a young woman who works there. At the same time, Danny and his crew arrive at the bank's garage using a delivery truck. Danny's team quickly spreads out. Outside the bank, another surveillance crew keeps watch on Danny. They ask their boss if they should launch an attack, but the boss orders them to wait until the robbery is over. The police car also arrives in front of the bank. Jack tries to go inside, but the bank is closed. Danny approaches him, pretending to be the manager to avoid suspicion. Jack insists that he wants to open a savings account, so Danny reluctantly lets him in. Jack approaches the counter and asks the girl out on a date. Suddenly, he senses something strange, and as he turns around, Danny and Will pull out their guns and take him hostage. Outside, Jack's partner unknowingly ends up helping the getaway driver, having no clue what's actually happening. Inside, Danny and his men finish grabbing the money, but Jack's partner catches them holding Jack hostage and tries to intervene. The robbers shoot him, but within moments, heavy police backup arrives. In the shootout that follows, all of Danny's team members are killed, and Danny and Will quickly escape through the parking lot with Jack. At one point, Jack lunges at Danny, but during the struggle, Will fires his gun, and Jack collapses, injured. Right after Will shoots Jack, he is filled with deep regret. But Danny tells him there's no turning back now. Jack is in critical condition, and they need to escape immediately. They head outside, only to see the police surrounding the entire area, so they rush back inside the building. At the same time, Cam and Scott arrive at the scene with their ambulance, responding to reports of an injured officer. Mark helps them load Jack into the ambulance and they get ready to take him out of there. But just then, Danny and Will get caught in a firefight with the police and spot their perfect chance to escape the ambulance. Danny forces Scott out and tells Will to drive while he holds Cam at gunpoint inside the vehicle. The police stop the ambulance, but Danny threatens Cam and forces her to lie. With Danny hiding and Cam cooperating, they manage to get away. Moments later, Mark finds Scott, who informs him that the ambulance has been hijacked. Mark then meets with a senior law enforcement officer, and it's revealed that the group secretly watching Danny earlier were actually MI6 agents. Meanwhile, Will drives the ambulance into a narrow alley, trying to avoid a helicopter circling above. As Will and Danny argue about their next move, Cam suddenly grabs a fire extinguisher and attacks them, trying to escape. But Danny aims his rifle and forces her to stop. At the same time, Jack is barely hanging on, so Cam has no choice but to return to the ambulance to keep him alive. Meanwhile, the FBI is alerted about the incident. A mobile unit works with the police to track the ambulance, which has started moving again. Danny keeps pressuring Will to drive faster until they finally reach the location of their getaway vehicle. So far away that walking there is impossible. Captain Monroe from MI6 continues tracking the ambulance from above. He instructs his officers to find a way to establish communication with the vehicle so they can begin negotiations. Meanwhile, Will is driving recklessly at top speed, trying to shake off the pursuing police units. Inside the ambulance, Cam keeps begging Danny to help her in the back, because Jack's condition is rapidly getting worse. He's barely clinging to life, and Cam needs assistance just to keep him stable. Danny eventually heads to the back to help her. Will has to dodge multiple police cars, using every bit of driving skill he has. The police try to block him from several directions, but he manages to escape each time. Meanwhile, Danny and Cam manage to revive Jack by shocking his heart. Right after that, Will stops the ambulance just before a dead end. The chasing police cars, however, don't notice it in time. They race forward and launch right off the dead end, giving Will enough space to reverse and escape. At this point, Will remembers a tactic used back in Afghanistan when terrorists were chasing their convoy. They drove under a bridge, and moments later, 5 identical vehicles emerged from the other side, confusing the pursuers. Danny loves the idea and immediately calls someone he knows named Papi. He tells Papi that he has $16 million, and if Papi can steal and release several ambulances across the city to confuse the police, he will give him half of it. Papi agrees, but at the same time, Cam warns that Jack is losing a lot of blood. Will's blood type matches Jack's, so they can perform a blood transfusion. Meanwhile, Monroe contacts the ambulance and tries to convince Danny to talk, but Danny has no intention of speaking. He simply tells Monroe to pull back his helicopters and then cuts the connection. Meanwhile, Mark shows up behind the ambulance in his police car. He is determined to save his friend. Will can't shake him off, so Danny decides to shoot, but Cam jumps on him and stops him from shooting Mark. Furious, Danny yells at Cam and threatens to kill her if she doesn't behave. Then he uses Cam as a hostage to force the police to back off. The plan works, and now an FBI officer steps forward to speak with Monroe. She had actually known Danny from back when she was in college. Jack begins bleeding even more because he has a second abdominal injury. Danny unlocks Cam's phone and calls a doctor he knows. That doctor then contacts 2 trauma surgeons, who guide Cam through performing abdominal surgery over video. Will tells Danny to take the wheel, because he has done medical work before and can help Cam stabilize Jack. An FBI agent, Clark, Danny's old friend, calls Danny and tries to talk him down, urging him to release the police officer and the medic before things get worse. But Danny refuses to give up. Will keeps shouting at Danny to slow the ambulance down because Cam literally has her hand inside Jack's spleen during the operation. At one point, Jack wakes up in a panic and Will has to sedate him again so Cam can continue the surgery safely. Their laptop battery soon dies, leaving Cam without any guidance from the doctors. Despite this setback, she manages to complete the operation and stabilize Jack. However, Monroe speaks to one of the doctors and learns that the surgery was extremely difficult. He assumes Jack is probably dead by now. This infuriates him, and he prepares to execute a full tactical strike against the ambulance. Monroe orders a perimeter lockdown and positions his snipers with permission to shoot. FBI agent Clark calls Jack's phone and Cam answers. He warns her that snipers are about to fire and that she needs to stay safe. Cam tells Clark that Jack is still alive, then immediately alerts Danny and Will about the snipers. Her warning sends Danny into a rage. While communicating openly with Monroe, Danny fires his gun at Cam in anger, completely losing control of the situation. Will starts fighting with Danny because Danny is clearly losing control. Fortunately, Cam is unharmed, and she secretly texts Clark, telling him that Danny is planning some kind of ambush on the road ahead. Clark calls Cam and urges her to try getting through to Will. He reminds her that Will isn't a criminal, and that she needs to convince him before it's too late. Cam speaks to Will when she gets the chance, but Will refuses to abandon his brother, no matter how dangerous Danny has become. After a while, the ambulance drives under a bridge, but Monroe sends 2 helicopters after them. Danny fires at the helicopters, while Will once again manages to escape. Eventually, they reach Papi's crew. One of Papi's men immediately starts repainting the ambulance green to help disguise it. Danny tells Will that he can leave now if he wants, but Will refuses to abandon his brother in the middle of this chaos. Danny then sends Papi's men out in several stolen ambulances. One of them gets arrested, while another drives straight toward the police and triggers a massive explosion. Mark spots the driver and chases after him. At the same time, another vehicle, equipped with a mounted machine gun, rolls into the police perimeter and opens fire. Monroe and several of his men are injured. Mark manages to catch the fleeing driver, who turns out to be Papi's son, and during the struggle, the man is accidentally shot with his own gun. Meanwhile, the real ambulance arrives at Papi's garage. Danny pays Papi, but Papi is devastated after learning that his son has just been killed. After some tense discussion, Papi agrees to the original deal. He keeps half the money. However, he also demands that they hand over the police officer and the medic because they've seen too much of his operation. Will refuses to leave them behind, and he starts arguing with Danny. Papi makes it clear that none of them will be allowed to leave with the hostages. Danny and Will continue arguing, only for it to be revealed that the argument was just an act. Suddenly, Danny and Will turn against Poppy's men. Will runs toward the ambulance, but Cam accidentally shoots him, mistaking him for one of Poppy's attackers. Worried sick about his brother, Danny quickly drives the ambulance straight to the hospital. Cam desperately tries to keep Will alive, but his condition is critical. While searching inside the ambulance, Danny finds a pistol and realizes Cam was the one who shot Will. Enraged, he points the gun at her and threatens to kill her live on television. Danny threatens the police, forcing them to take a step back. In a fit of excitement, he tries to jump out of the ambulance like a cowboy, but Will shoots him from behind, preventing him from harming Cam. Danny falls to the ground and Will is taken into custody. Cam rushes to Will's side to encourage him and tells him that his wife has arrived. After Will is taken away, Cam goes to Amy and informs her that her husband has saved her life. Before leaving, she asks Amy to forgive Will, then places a bag full of money at her feet. Finally, when Jack wakes up, the police question him, and he confirms that Will saved his life. And that's where we end today's amazing action movie explanation. You can watch the full movie on the new BDO. Until then, goodbye.